And I think the volume of people that are being produced is huge. However, the gap is still growing. We still have even more need. And one of my pet peeves is that we ask too much of people at entry level. Entry level is not really entry level. I've had a number of people who've gone through the school system and they put their faith in that and they've worked really hard and they've got good grades and sometimes they have an internship and they then find that the first rung on the ladder is 6 feet up and it's really hard to get onto the ladder in some cases. So that's the first thing I'd say, and I think it's beholden to us as an industry, everybody here who's going into cyber, everybody who's already in it, to make that journey easier, to help more people see themselves on it, because there's many more potential candidates out there for this job than are currently seeing themselves in this job. Carissa Varma, who I know also presented at this event, and I and some colleagues founded a group called Hacking into Cybersecurity. We're trying to make that journey easier, and the one thing I would request of everybody here is lean in. If you're looking to get in, contact us. Don't be shy, and if you're already in it, then put your hand out and open up the door. So that's what I'd start with, Maggie.
So Frank, did you want to go ahead and share your opening remarks now, or the slides you included?
Yeah, I would just go to the slides. I think Sam started, he set the stage pretty well. Let me just make sure that.
I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Frank, so feel free.
No, you were perfect.
On that.
How's this? Can you see my screen?
Unfortunately, no. I'm not a Microsoft Teams expert.
Okay, let me see.
Nemesis would be a better word.
If you
there we go.
How about this?
There you go. Yep, you're perfect.
Yep.
Okay. So let me bring it in. So I think what I'd like to do is kind of address the marketplace from a growth perspective and opportunity for students, really, at the end of the day, and from the perspective of the enterprise. So I'd like to thank everybody from the New Jersey group that's hosted this conference. It's our second year, and I think it's great because awareness is I believe the key issue that confronts us in the market. So a little bit about basic IQ4. Our goal is to transform learning in what we believe is a new approach to blending academic learning and real world application of skills. So we've developed this talent cloud to help learners and enterprise and educational institutions come together in terms of focusing on the whole idea of discovery, development, and retention of great talent, but in a way that automates the marketplace. Because to Sam's point, scale is absolutely critical, and ensuring that the enterprise is able to share with the learners, and the students what they're looking for is really key. And what we're seeing, folks, and we're in New York, we're in New Jersey, we work with a lot of the organizations here, and what we're starting to see is a reversal of how the talent market will work, which is students. They want students to find them. They want students. Sam would love to have a student, based on what he's looking for, the skills and competencies, find his organization, what he's looking to hire for, or others like that. So we teamed with the National Student Clearinghouse, which manages all the back office of all the schools in the country, including New Jersey, post-secondary school, and IBM's Learning Credential Network, to create this learning and employment record, which helps students capture the next level. It's really the next level digital resume. So it's really focused on capturing skills and competencies, proficiency levels, things of that nature. And in a way, as you can see, that's graphically, really powerful. It empowers you students in a way that an employer can look at this and go, wow, I could see the skills that student has, how they align to the needs I have, and really helps you control the future, the career paths that you'd like to take, et cetera. So that's a little bit on IQ4. We're really looking to automate this whole process, right? let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity itself. So what is cybersecurity? For many of those who may not know, I talk about the student of the future. And no matter what you study, no matter what discipline that your heart is set on, or at least that you're involved in, there are three core areas that I believe every single student on the planet needs to really have some level of awareness in. One is data, right? So what is data? How is it used? You hear things like data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence. I mean, we are a world that is evolving and our underlying growth is based on data. The second is everything is connected. So from a technology perspective, we all should understand networks and just at least a high level of what it means and how data is connected among each other and all types of sources and organizations on the planet. And the third, if everything is connected and data is the asset, then that means everything that's connected could be vulnerable. So that's what cybersecurity is. So cybersecurity is all about securing the vulnerability of that asset, of that data, personal information, banking information, healthcare information, what have you. And the other cool thing is it's for everybody. It doesn't matter what you're studying. So whether you're if you're in marketing, management, technology, philosophy, psychology, it does not matter. There are different opportunities. As you can see here, behavioral analyst, that's HR. That's about teaching people not to do phishing emails and open them up. IT risk, that's analytics, that's business, that's economics. Compliance, that's risk, compliance, and things of that nature. So I'm not going to go through all of this. I will say when we got involved in cyber in 2015, there were about 300,000 jobs open. Now there's 3.5 million jobs open. So this, as the dark side figures out how to continue to try to access and breach and gain access into different areas of vulnerability and different asset bases, it'll just expand the need to hire and bring on more talent to protect those assets as we move forward. And from a perspective from schools, it could start right from high school through post-secondary. It could be, you could get into cybersecurity. It doesn't matter what you're doing right now today, how many years you have in the workforce, and where you're working, whether it's healthcare, manufacturing, et cetera. And we believe that the market is, as I mentioned, is just going to continue to grow. As you can see, the Internet of Things, the technology that's being connected is the market size estimates in terms of IoT will surpass 1 trillion by 2022. And the amount of breaches and attempts to breach, it just increases tenfold year after year. So in 2015, when we were going through our whole program, IQ4, and looking at the market and the skills gap and what we could do to try to focus on an area to help create awareness and to prepare the workforce readiness of students, we focused on cyber. I personally connected with the Wall Street folks I know very well. We've done a lot of work with Wall Street and technology, and I asked them what the biggest issue they have, and they said cybersecurity, and that was in 2014. So we created a Cybersecurity Workforce Alliance to improve the awareness of cybersecurity technology risk and skills capabilities for the students. And our goals were to create a credential that was industry driven, that helped students understand what the industry was looking for in terms of skills and applying your knowledge, to reduce the cost of that hiring, that whole life cycle, to increase awareness, and to create a way for learning institutions to understand that supply and demand, to optimize the curriculum so they could teach students the kind of skills that they need to run the business. So that's the apprenticeship challenge. We actually virtualized the model of apprenticeships, which we love. We love the whole notion of applied learning. And so we've had thousands of students go through the program. There's actually one we're offering, like we did last year, to all the students attending this conference for free, which I'll give you a little link at the end. But it's all really about massively scaling a workforce that we need desperately to do because it just keeps expanding. So preparing students to enter this new, this new marketplace is not a small task. But by giving students an opportunity to work with folks like Sam and other subject matter experts in the country, in the state, through these apprenticeship programs, it's like a launch pad with booster rockets. You know how you go and you apply for a job, and like, what's one of the first questions that the interview asks you? What experience do you have? So here you are, a student coming out of school or working in school, continuing in school, not yet graduated. What kind of experience could you have? So we wanted to provide that experience. We wanted to be able to have you answer that question and go, oh, I could talk to you about the Nist framework, right? And the categories of the Nist framework and what to do in terms of a breach and how do you respond to the public and your shareholders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when they have those conversations, the students with the employers, they're pretty much blown away. And they realize that they've got that real world. So what we did, and just bear with me for a few more minutes, what we did was when we built out the Cybersecurity Workforce Alliance, we knew that we needed more than just technology. And you can see here, we built it on 4 pillars, what we believe that would be required to bring this fragmented ecosystem together. So industry in terms of standards, government in terms of the business case, education in terms of its ability to develop, and investors to be able to fund the different programs. And as you can see, we have we've come a long way. We started with 7 individuals in the Cybersecurity Workforce Alliance. These were CISOs in New York, primarily at the banks, as well as the Federal Reserve. And today we have over 3,200 subject matter experts, industry and government members. It's an open source program. They are all voluntary. They provide all kinds of content and skills data, and most importantly, digital coaching for students to help them understand about cybersecurity. So the key are the user journeys, right? Our goal is really to have you students, John Flores here, for example, be able to simply upload a resume, work through learning about cyber, and eventually getting hired by that hiring manager who can connect with you and understand the skills that you have and the experience that you've had. But it also is the flip side. It's also about hiring managers being able to find, and coach the you students during that process, during that journey. So that's the problem that we solve, connecting talent with the workforce. We believe it's really critical. We believe that technology could bridge the gap. And for those of you that are involved in this event, students, please feel free here to sign up for a free cybersecurity. I think it's 5 or 6 weeks program that we're donating to this project, to this event. And that's it. And I can turn it back over.
All right.
To you all.
Thank you so much for that, Frank. So I think with that, now we're going to dive right into the conversation. We have a few questions here. I think, though we did just get one that's actually pretty good, which is what are some of the qualities you'd recommend new cybersecurity graduates have in the job search? I'm going to let you know that we did see that one, so we will get to it unless somebody wants to grab it now. But we had a variety of questions that were kind of sent to us that we discussed.
Yeah, I'm happy to address that one.
You want to address that one right
from
now?
my perspective right now. The thing is, you can come from any walk of life, any training, any background, from very little to a lot, and many different disciplines. One of the most exciting things happening in both academia and the public sector is this cross-disciplinary that's happening, right? Because fundamentally, cyber is about human conflict. It's human-to-human conflict, and so any understanding, sociology applies, history applies, literature applies, a ton of stuff applies. But of course, the sciences, the hard sciences. But I think the most important way to answer this question is there's 2 things. First is, what do you want to do? Because certainly in academia, maybe it's a little different, but in the private sector and in government, every role is needed to support cyber functions as well. So in our own Cybereason, right, we've got marketing people and lawyers, and we've got salespeople, and we've got marketing, we've got HR people. So whatever background you're in, there's a path to get in, and that's the same. The same is true with my competitors as well. And the second thing is attitude over skills. And I say that there are some things you need skills, but they can be taught. You can be put on a path to do that. But attitude and leaning in and not being technophobic, it is a little intimidating for some, not so much for the younger generations, but leaning in and having a can-do attitude, a make it happen attitude, a just do it attitude will get you a really long way. We hired one woman at Cybereason with a history background, and we made her, put her in the customer success organization. Today, she's an analyst. I'm not going to name her, but if she's listening, she knows who she is. That should be the normal way, as opposed to, hey, you got to turn up for an entry-level job with 3 or 4 years of experience. So certainly I do, and I hope my peers do. The ones I speak to usually share this philosophy of attitude over immediate skills, because there's a path for everyone.
And Frank, from that perspective.
Yeah, I would also add that. So we referred to those, Sam, as essential skills. Oh, I'm sorry, there was a delay here, it looks like. I was just going to say, no, I would agree with Sam in that we do refer to those as essential skills. So it's not just, so it is EQ, IQ, right? It's problem solving, leadership, professionalism, communication skills. So yes, those we find from employers are the most important. Why? And students, this is really important. They want to know that you have a propensity that you want to learn, that you want to continue to develop, that you can grow in an organization. That's the most important piece. So if you could get some awareness and some experience in cyber, and again, doesn't matter what your study is, then I think what we're really looking for is folks that really want to learn.
I think we're, Frank, you're kind of going in and out there. So I think I'm going to pivot to Sam a little bit here for just a second. If you want to try to maybe close a few programs or something to keep that a little bit smoother. So, so I think it's, we have like a whole list of questions here, but I actually have to just from my own heart counter that one a little bit, going like, well, it's all very well and good to say you care about, you have core skills and you care a lot about it, but like, if you could do it again with this kind of how quickly this world, as Sam was saying, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there wasn't a degree you could get, and that is rapidly changing. If you could do it again, and you had to do it now, what would you do differently? Or is there a skill set you would pick up, like a specific one, other than just like, being enthusiastic? Or is there a place you would aim for?
So it's funny. It's kind of not fair to do the, would you do it again? Because if you did it again, you have to do it one of two ways. You either have to not know everything you know and go back in time, because it's not fair to do it any other way, or you'd have to start over right now and imagine yourself as a young you now. I have noticed, by the way, I started noticing this about 15 years or so ago. Security people were desperate to learn business skills, and I say that because I think the biggest problem in security is the divide between security departments and their businesses. They don't understand each other, and so that provides the opportunity for a dialogue. So if you're in I think there's a certain cyber literacy required, and Frank mentioned this, of everyone, but it's not a very high bar. And so there are some cyber certificates you can take. For instance, Seton Hall has a really good one as an example. And those are, yes, there's training for people who want to go deep into the bits and bytes and understand crypto and everything else. But we're talking about essentially the cyber survival skills and business skills to begin to contribute to cyber as a discipline within the company and mend that divide. So I think if I had to do it over again, and I'm a student, I think going beyond basic cyber literacy, maybe if I'm in a non-technical discipline, some simple coding is a good idea, because you have to understand basic attack types, and I think that would help. But again, the thing is, envision the direction you want to go. And I would also advise people in the InfoSec programs and the computer science programs, take some business courses. You may not be comfortable there. It will prove invaluable afterwards. Banks have a position called a BISO, right? A business information security officer whose job is to translate between those two halves. It should be an unnecessary position. Many of them are wonderful, by the way, but we should have more business literacy in cyber and more cyber literacy outside. I hope I answered it, Maggie.
Can you hear me, guys, better?
We can now, yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry. So I'm sorry about that. I did have an open window. I would just also add to Sam's, most of the students we put about 7,000 students through the program, but really from the business side, arts and sciences side, not basically non-cyber, non-tech. If you're familiar, the NSA has a program called, what's it called, Sam? The National Security Association has, agency. They have that cyber program.
A few.
Colleges.
Which one?
What is it? The colleges of academic excellence.
I think they actually call them centers of excellence or something.
Centers of excellence. Yes, centers of academic
research excellence. Centers of
yes,
research excellence.
Yes. Yeah. So there's about 100,000 students in that. Now, just imagine there's 3.5 million jobs right now. Probably 20% are open for entry level. So you're talking 600,000 jobs open right now for entry level, learners or any entry level period. And you're talking about 100,000 people being trained in the country formally in cyber. That's why you need the business side. I also think, and I don't know what your perspective on this, Sam, is, but what we see is the cyber analytics is a really huge market. So all of the Ernst & Young, PwC, Deloitte, they're hiring tons of students to do the analysis on the cyber side, the governance, risk, and compliance side, versus penetration testing and hacking and all of that. So there's really two worlds. That's what we see.
Yeah. So actually, I was just sorry. I was a little caught because there was a really interesting question in the chat that was asking about, do people in cybersecurity face ageism? And that kind of folds into a discussion topic I know that Sam finds a particular interest, and I'm sure Frank has some great insights too, about ageism, inclusivity, neurodiversity in cybersecurity. Like, how do we bring more people in, and how do we and is this a problem? And if it is a problem, then how do we overcome it? How do we solve the world's problems?
So I'll tackle that first. I want to say, by the way, first of all, my father is 76 and going strong in cyber. And one of the things I've noticed is most of us don't care about age. I say most of us. There's always some subtle bias. There's always some ageism present somewhere. But take the case of my father. He said, "Who wants to hire a 76-year-old?" I said, "Who doesn't? You've been doing this for over 50 years. If someone could get 1 year out of you, they would be happy, and they're willing to pay a premium for it." The ageism that exists in many industries exists here too, but to a lesser degree. And I would say that you'd be hard pressed to find somebody who will exclude you because you're older. More often, you get people who judge you because you're younger, and that's not fair either. They're like, how could somebody who's in their 20s have enough experience for this? And I have as little time for that as anywhere else. I'm going to go back to look for attitude, but that's not to downplay masses of experience and skill. That's absolutely needed. I hired a coder who was 72, and she produced some of the best code. She became a super coder very, very quickly 10 years ago, and was an absolute leader. And she wanted to be an individual contributor. She'd been a manager. She wasn't interested in doing more of that. That doesn't mean that you won't face obstacles or challenges, and internal ones too. But on your neurodiversity point, the best way I heard about it is the adversary is diverse. They come from all over the world. They're men, they're women, they're old, they're young. How are we going to put anybody, pick your tranche, in a room, everybody's alike, and figure them out? How are we going to understand the opponent? The more minds in the room that think differently, men, women, Muslims, Jews, Christians, atheists, older, younger, different ethnicities, the more you get in that room, the more options you're going to get, and the more rationale and reasoning you're going to get when you're in a crisis. So my advice is diversity isn't just a socially just thing, which is wonderful. It's also a competitive advantage when you're dealing with conflict. And so I'd put that out there, and the same is true for age. And Frank, feel free to chime in or disagree.
No. I'll just add, because you already covered some great ground. So just a little background. We started our IQ4. We started with the aerospace industry, And our goal back in the early 2010 was to try to address STEM education in the United States, and how could we get students excited about pursuing science, technology, engineering, and math, right? Because we were losing our leadership in the country and around the world. And we got into this whole notion of project-based learning and automating that. When we got into cyber, well, when we did that, we worked with NYU, Poly, New Jersey. We were with Stevens Tech. We worked with MIT, all the science schools, right? We got into cyber with New York. We said, we're going to try something different. We're going to try to work with students that are not in these well-known schools. Especially, we're going to actually try to work with public school students, right? So we went and I launched a program with the Vice Chancellor of CUNY, the City University of New York. They have 425,000 students, 26 colleges. Average household income is $19,500 a year. Let's prove that students that would never have a chance almost in a lifetime to be involved with an internship or an apprenticeship in cybersecurity with a bank in New York, we can do that overnight. And we did. We put 4,000 students through the program. Not only did we prove that we can do it, but they were winning jobs over students coming out of a Columbia or Carnegie, et cetera, et cetera. Why? Because they work with real live mentors for, 3 months on a macro credential. And we were able to prove that we could teach the student the skill, apply the skill, and show that they had the capacity and capability to do the job. So one thing about IQ4 is we believe in leveling the playing field. Before all the DEI and all these other things came out, we were after that back 10 years ago. The other thing I will say is we are actually right at, say, about 2 months from launching a neurodiversity program. So in neurodiversity, which is, spectrum related folks, we have quite a number of folks in our CWA that either have children or are personally on the spectrum. And so what we did was we had to repurpose our content around a neurodiverse type of individual, which meant the look and the feel, the color. There was a number of attributes that we needed to deal with to change or modify the program for neurodiverse individuals. And we also focused on what we felt were the key skills behind what an individual on the spectrum, and specifically in pattern matching. So in pattern matching, as you know, Sam, maybe you want to talk about that a little bit, but it is a very complicated area. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Folks on the spectrum, they're lights out when it comes to that. Folks like myself, I can't see the pattern matching like somebody on the spectrum can see it. So we focused the projects themselves in that area. I don't know if you wanted to expand on that a little bit, Sam.
Yeah, no, it's not all. By the way, it's not all like the movie Rain Man, but two of the most effective cyber executives I've ever met. I won't name them and call them out. One was an SVP at a large independent software vendor. The other one was an entrepreneur who founded 2 companies, and they were both quite high on the autism spectrum. But there's also other forms of neurodiversity. ADHD is one, Tourette's, right? Different ways of thinking, and connecting the dots is interesting. But I'm going to add something here, because diversity as a whole, we have an opportunity not just to work from home right now. Many jobs have been limited by what was physically available. If you lived in a particular neighborhood, you could be 2-3 hours from a school or from a job. The commute's practically impossible. Now, I think what we've got is a chance to have anybody anywhere gain cyber skills at a relatively low cost, and anybody anywhere to be able to do cyber jobs. So, my headquarters for my company's in Boston. I have offices in Tel Aviv and Tokyo, right, and London. Those are my hiring areas, unless it was a field position. Not anymore. I can hire an analyst anywhere in the world and map them to one of my 3 offices to get the time zones right, and that's it. So as long as we can get to a level playing field to some degree, or digital parity, we don't have to yet solve how do we get someone to work or to school or back and make it affordable for them to commute. The bottom of the pyramid has accessibilities. Bottom of the wealth pyramid has accessibility now to jobs, as you mentioned, Frank, never before available, or even if they were available at such a high cost they couldn't practically get it. And I don't think we should waste that opportunity either.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I wanted, so I wanted to use to pivot that. So that was, I think, how should I say this? It's a great abstract thing to say that we need more people, and we want to welcome more people in these people, you know, and we'll be stronger with a wider variety of people in the field. But it's also a little bit abstract. It doesn't really provide like necessarily a concrete way in for some people. So I would say from there, like I'm hearing about some great programs. I'm hearing about some great certifications. You know, I'm hearing about how much we want to open the doors, but like, what does one do if they want to network, if they want to find one of these programs like IQ4 and ones like that? Where would I even begin to look if I was just kind of first being turned on to the opportunities in the sector, I guess? Just, you know, Twitter might be an answer, for example. I know a lot of people on Twitter in the field.
I think there's meetups. You can find them. There's social groups. There's Facebook groups. There's LinkedIn is an amazing resource. I have a personal policy. If anybody reaches out to me to try to get help or coaching or mentorship or advice, I always answer. It might take me a little while. If they prove to be salespeople, they're out, right? But I try, and a lot of my colleagues do that too. It's part of the pay it forward, right? We want cyber to be for everyone and welcoming and open. And I know it's intimidating to do that. So I would encourage anybody on here, send me a note if you're interested, and I'll see if I can help. And I hope that's true of all my colleagues. But it is a social game. This is about getting to know folks, and that happens in schools. If you take something like the cybersecurity certificate, right? Seton Hall has one. There are others. If you take that, you're starting to rub elbows with people. It's the same people, same reason people sometimes get graduate degrees. It is about getting to know and build a personal network. And as you grow your career, that will grow, but you got to start it. So my answer is social. Frank may have others, but you can begin to find people who are interested locally, or meetups or evening groups, or found one.
Yeah, so I would say I just posted a couple of people. I've been watching some of the questions come up. So there's an organization called NICE, the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. It's a government initiative. It's sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security and Nist, which is the U.S. think tank, right? The National Institute for Science and Technology. And I posted the Resource Center. I didn't have a chance to kind of work through here on the call, but if you click through the NICE Resource Center, you'll find links to jobs. I'm trying to think of the resource there is, which is about all cyber jobs in the U.S., where you can find what's open right now. The underlying technology is burning glass, but I'm trying to think of what the name of it is. But there are, if you just look up cybersecurity jobs, I'm sure you can find it, and that'll provide, you know, a ton of insight into the jobs there. The NICE framework, the NICE organization has a ton of opportunity, not just within industry, but government. You know, our government, state level, federal level, there is such a shortage and what we call the war for talent that you know, you could find great jobs there. The other thing I see here on coming up are, you know, our certifications important. We have a program where, you know, we focused strictly on this virtual apprenticeship, virtual internship, right? So we call that a macro credential because it blends. For example, we'll include a 101 course on Python. So anybody could learn about Python, which to Sam's point before, it's important to understand some basic languages and logic and how to take policies and other things that are important and how it can be automated. You don't have to be a programmer. It's really easy. However, we've also created that macro credential as a stackable credential toward a CompTIA certification, so there's a couple of certifications, right? You can go to CompTIA, you can go to ISACA, you go to ISC Squared, and SANS Institute. Those are 4 organizations that, and I'm sure Sam could provide a lot more insight on this.
And they're good ones, yeah.
Right, that are good certification. Now, here's the issue, though. What I hear from employers, students will go, even professionals, even like senior professionals, to get a CSIP degree, right? You think, oh, if I get a CSIP certification, I'm in, I could get a Cicio job. No, you can't, right? Because you have to be able to demonstrate you understand the skills and you understand how to apply them. The most important part is the second part. So to me, I think while these credentials in terms of these certifications are important, I think the first step is getting that real world experience. That's absolutely critical, Path.
And
Sam,
you know, and I would add, I read a fascinating Harvard Business Review article years ago that said the best way to get ahead and to stay ahead is to go sideways, and it's counterintuitive, meaning breadth of experience gives you a good strong base of the pyramid. And I know folks are like, I could do the job, I got the certification, let me at it, I should jump in pay. I would encourage not to think that way, right? It's not just about climbing the pole. It is instead about becoming a really good broad-based human and cyber person and business person. And in that world, you'll be ready to move ahead and stay ahead. So you mentioned soft skills earlier. I like the term power skills, right? Leadership, communication, understanding what are the motivators in a business. Because you can't just be approaching, you know, a CIO and saying, hey, let's go do this crazy security project. What they hear is, you know, I'd like to add a lot of tickets to your queue for answering, and I'd like them to be open a lot longer and to break some things. So you kind of got to know how to approach the person across the table, and that and by the way, that doesn't mean that people that are, say, on the autism spectrum can't do this. They can. We are talking about learned skills, not inherent skills. If you have inherent skills, great, that's a start. But honestly, all of this can be taught. So my advice is don't just go straight up, and don't go get that certification to get the next level of pay unless you're in an organization that is literally paying out, hey, when you get this credential, the salary goes up. That's not the way most of the industry works.
All right. Well, we've actually covered in one way or another a lot of the questions that we had and many of the ones in the chat. Frank, Sam, we have about 10 minutes left of our time. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that is burning a hole in your pocket?
I'm just happy to see, by the way, that everyone is chatting with each other here, which I think is much better than listening to us pontificate. And I think that there's some healthy things going on. So I would encourage everyone to read the chat as well as listen to us and chime in. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I believe the cybersecurity industry is only going to get more interesting, not less so. We are in a digital connected world, which means it's getting to the point where you can't tell where physical world ends and digital begins. They're so interleaved that will only grow. That means we're going to have critical points of failure that could lead to big catastrophes. It means that a fundamental quality the world needs in order to be anti-fragile and robust is good cyber. And otherwise, we're going to reach a point where we won't be able to have more innovation, and the tech sector will slow down, and then all sectors will slow down. On the flip side, if we do it right, we can keep going and keep growing in ways that are sustainable and green and everything else. I think this is one of the most interesting areas to be in among maybe 3 or 4 over the long haul. And I would also caution against either expecting too much of AI or being threatened by it in our space. There is intelligence in cyber. It's carbon-based, and I believe the silicon-based for the foreseeable future should be helping and assisting that. So the other thing is look at adjacent skill sets because they will serve you well long-term. Be good at data science is a good one. Understand human motivation. Things like political science are important as well. And look at new threat types because fundamentally these threats, they're not an abstract thing. Ransomware isn't just machines doing nasty things. There's people behind it. Same thing with supply chain attacks. Same thing with nation state attacks. So get cross-disciplinary and mix these things. It's far more interesting than just staying in one lane.
And Sam, I'm going to just chime in as a big history nerd. Also, it doesn't hurt to know your history of the 20th century because a lot of my favorite example is if you don't understand, for example, the Cold War, you might not understand some of the conflicts going on in cybersecurity right now, as far as how certain the stories that certain nations tell themselves about why their actions are justified, and maybe the truths or the tactics. So really everything that you can possibly learn is going to feed into this adversarial industry, which is constantly evolving and constantly changing. And some of the smartest and coolest people I've ever met are in our industry. So I definitely highly encourage people who are listening to look into it. And Frank, I'd be remiss not to open the floor to you.
The last comment I would make is First of all, I would encourage folks to take advantage of our free session that we're doing for the students. We did one last year. We finished it up. It was an awesome opportunity. We already have folks signing up from all over the world, by the way. So we've got students over, I think, in India, Portugal. I don't know how they're all hearing about this, but we've got students all over, which is the kind of cool thing about a virtual apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship. And we are a national sponsor for the Department of Labor, so for apprenticeships. So we have a whole program around that. But I see chats here about what does it take? What are the tasks involved in entry level? So if you look at that nice, the link that I posted on the NICE, I know it says Nist, but it's the NICE framework, right? They're tightly coupled. The NICE initiative is an initiative that covers primarily what are the skills and competencies needed to support Nist, basically to support a methodology to implement an organization with a approach to manage risk. And you know, if you look at Goldman Sachs, for example, they didn't even call it cybersecurity, they called it IT risk. Because really, at the end of the day, it's the risk in IT that's at stake. And if you look at the NICE framework specifically, there's a document, and it will show you all of the roles, potential roles in cybersecurity, the tasks that are associated, the different competencies and skills that are associated. And if you really kind of do your homework a little bit, you'll find all kinds of data about pathways and job opportunities and how to gain access from it. It's a fantastic organization. Students, you should really look at that. Faculty, anybody should really familiarize yourself if you're not with the NICE framework, because it's a great deal of data about the marketplace, and it's their mission to provide the market, public and private sector, with awareness and methodologies and actually a standards-based taxonomy so that everybody speaks the same language. So the NSA, they've created a curriculum around cyber and teaching cyber. That's tied to the framework so that the learning outcomes from the classes are all specifically related to the skills that the employers are looking for. So I think that would be a very helpful resource. But I think the questions here are awesome. I've never done this with Sam before, and Maggie. It's a great trio.
Sorry, I was just so taken aback by the compliment. It just totally derailed my thought process.
That's about cyber. We're gonna inject you with a little bit of cyber. Oh, surprise!
Yeah, surprise! Oh no, derailed. Social engineering. Cerebellum hijacking. Amygdala hijacking. That's Rachel Toback's term. We are still getting some great book recommendations in here. There were two things I wanted to cover with our remaining time. One was just to say, if we haven't covered your questions, please reach out to us individually. We can make sure that we get those questions answered, especially some of the more like detailed ones that would maybe not exactly fit into the topic of this panel. So I didn't want to derail us necessarily, but are still extremely valid questions that just deserve a bit more time on their own. But also, I know last year Seton Hall was a little bit upset that they never got plugged in the panels they helped put on. So I did want to, on behalf of Seton Hall, our very generous platform here, say that they do have certifications and their own courses in cybersecurity here, which are quite excellent. And you should be sure to check those out as well. And just to make sure we pay the piper there properly. Let's see, with 3 minutes, is there one more question we want to try to answer in the last 3 minutes, or for anyone? Actually, we'll just go with that one. Which book would you recommend as take-home reading after today's discussion?
Well, I just recommended one, 1177 BC, and I will say why. And I know, Maggie, you did a master's on this, I believe, on the subject of which this touches. Yeah. In the Bronze Age, there was a collapse, and it was effectively a globalized society, which isn't about being around the world. It's about how many hops there are in a system. It collapsed, and examining it is super good food for thought, and it's a very readable book. Because it tells us what might happen now, and look at supply chains in this country. Look what's happening with the great shortage of shortages, or enormity of shortages. If we want to understand that, if we want the anti-fragility comment earlier, which is different from being robust, if you really want to understand why it's important that you don't have single points of failure, and why a failure in one set of things upstream can have catastrophic consequences for downstream and for the whole system, it's just good food for thought, and as long as you can handle stories about Mycenae and Egypt and things like that, and Hittites. So that's my recommendation. It's a little bit out of the norm, but I think there's big lessons for cyber and for society.
Frank?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the book of one of our co-chairs of the CWA just wrote it. He's the Cicio for Connecticut. His name is Jeff Brown, Brown. He just wrote a book on cyber risk. Jeff Brown, Cicio, Connecticut, and he's going to shoot me because I forget the name of his book. But if you look up Jeff Brown, it's a fantastic book. It's all about the ecosystem of cyber industry, government, education, and he's a fantastic individual. So
I think the book is Security Leaders Communication Playbook.
Yes, that's exactly it. There you go. Thank you.
Oh, somebody posted it.
Oh, there you go. That's it. That's a great book because it's not just for security leaders, but also, look, all of you. So on my board, one of the individuals, I'll close my side with this. On my board of advisors is retired Lieutenant General Bill Mayville. And Bill Mayville was the co-chair of the U.S. Army Cyber Command. And when he gets on with our students, because he does make his guest appearances, his one-liner is, "You are the future leaders of cybersecurity on the planet." And so read this book, because it's all about whatever level of leadership you want to obtain. It's really important to understand the opportunities are just gigantic for you. So don't think for 1 second that there's anything that can prevent you from getting in the field and becoming a leader in cyber.
And I have to say, Maggie has a recommendation in the chat. Don't forget to take a look at it. I know we're out of time, but I know you wouldn't say it yourself. It's worth looking at. And you wrote a great blog on privateers in the digital world.
Yeah, I think the lesson from it is just read widely, because you never know when it's going to come in handy.
Oh, and read Dune. Read Dune. The movie's coming out in like 7-8 days. Like, read that. Yeah.
We'll be commissioning them. That's a discussion for another time, Harry. But I think that we're about to be like shepherd hooked off the stage if we don't give our time. So thank you once again to Frank and to Sam for this discussion today.